Did AEW make the right call with Hangman and Bryan?
I am going to say yes, because when Hangman and Swerve had their feud, and then Hangman came back and then they did that quick little one-off, and it just didn't really make a ton of sense. It still ended up being good. Like, I don't think revisiting Hangman Swerve was the way to go. I mean, plus, Bryan has to win some big matches here, and he finally won a big match to get him into a spot where he gets that main event spot at Wembley Stadium. Like, Bryan, Swerve, main event of Wembley, it's going to be fantastic. I think 100% this is the right way to go. And then we saw Hangman immediately go realign himself with the Elite in last night's show, which furthers his storyline, furthers that part. Like, it ended up kind of weaving into the show very nicely. So I would say 100% they made the right call with Bryan Danielson winning.
I guess that's the case now because, again, and I will be consistent with this, I thought that Swerve Strickland and Ospreay should have been the main event in Wembley. It's not going to happen that way. As a matter of fact, it would not surprise me if Ospreay loses his international championship against MJF next week in Little Rock.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 250th episode of AEW Dynamite. MJF, and again, do you see MJF as international champion? No, but this is the title that Will Ospreay has. So I can see that happening. So because of this, as much as I think it would be cool to see Hangman Page and Swerve again, not at that show. Hangman Page is even deeper into his character now than he ever has been before. To the point where I almost thought he was going to win against Bryan Danielson. Yeah. I thought it was that close. That's how good that match was. So I got no problem with it. Bryan Danielson has never won a championship. The first belt he held up in this company was that Owen belt.
Right.
The first time he's had that. So I guess at that point, soon, guys, we got to talk about who's going to win that.
Right.
Danielson could win, and here's how. If Bryan Danielson, Gabe, was able to win the championship, then here's what would happen. Even though he's retiring, a booking idea is, you know what? I won the championship. That's great, but I'm going to be retiring soon. So whoever's going to beat me, you can have the championship and I'll retire. My next loss will be my retirement. You can book it that way because now you do that on TV and pay-per-view, and it's kind of like, you know what? I'm the champion, but I promised my daughter or my kids that I would retire. So my next loss will be my retirement match. Come beat me if you can.
I think that works perfectly. I think it all ends at Wrestle Dream, which is in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area. So in his hometown, I think the perfect way to do that. You talk about little details. Him last night, Martha Hart trying to raise his hand, but his arm still being sold as hurt. Like, he's so damn good. And you talk about like the surprise at the end of the show. I was surprised that Bryan won because I'm just so accustomed to him losing these big matches, and it felt like it was Hangman and Swerve now. So there are a lot of set things for All In, and it's some damn good stuff between Bryan and Swerve, Tony and Mariah, Mercedes and Britt. But then there's a lot of questions right now that, like, I'm confused at where they're going. We're getting Ospreay and MJF next week, which we all assume would be at Wembley. Pac wins that match last night, so he says he's going to Wembley. And there's still time to tell stories, but overall, I think it was the right call because Bryan versus Swerve will deliver. I agree. Put the belt on Bryan. Give him one last run, however long it might be. But, man, that's going to be a fun main event.
I just assumed that they were going to, he's going to lose it at Winter is Coming on a random Wednesday in Topeka. Like, that's just how I assumed AEW was going to do this. But I do love the idea of Bryan winning. And apparently the reason why they're not doing Ospreay, apparently it was Ospreay's idea to wrestle Swerve because he wanted him to more establish Swerve as over because he hated this idea of, everyone knows that Ospreay's just going to take the title from him. So he's the transitional champion at Wembley. So Ospreay said, screw it. That's not the way we're going to go. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. That's the rumor that's out there.
If that is true, then it shows you how far behind AEW is. Honestly, because that should come from the top. No, this is not your time to win the championship on Long Island, New York. It should be in Wembley. If Ospreay had to tell Tony Khan, I don't want the championship, Swerve should beat me, that's tough. Because Because we said as a show that Long Island, New York was not the spot for Ospreay to just win the championship because you got Wembley right here. Right. So, I mean, if you're going to put the title on him, it should have been in his home country, but it's not happening now. So now it's Ospreay in some middle of the road match. It won't be in the main event.
No,
it could be Ospreay Pac at this point in time. Who knows?
Right, but think about what that does to the crowd. 2 UK guys.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point in time, guys, it is Daniel Garcia, MJF, in Wembley. That's where they're headed.
I agree. I don't love the MJF one from a strictly wrestling. Like, I'm excited about Ospreay Pac. Like, we know what those two can and will do, especially at Wembley. But, like, Bryan versus Swerve is a good consolation prize to me because I agree. I thought it should have been Ospreay and Swerve. Bryan and Swerve, I'm good with.
Ospreay with no stakes is tough. Ospreay another great match. Ospreay another 7-star match. Okay, but no stakes though. No championship. Well, it's just.
Well, I mean, we see Daniel Garcia return because again, Wembley's not that far away. Like Wembley's going to be here before we know it.
It's still over a month. It's a lot of dynamites.
Yeah, that's true. It is a lot of dynamites. But do we see Daniel Garcia return next week? That they're overselling this.
Sure.
Oh, it could be 6 months from now, right? And he returns, helps Ospreay retain. And because MJF and Garcia, because of the way that MJF attacked him, that doesn't need a championship. That's a blood feud at this point, right? So it doesn't need a championship. So then the international championship stays with, stays with Ospreay, and then you have that for the international championship with maybe Pac going over. Who knows? Maybe Bryan Danielson's rubbing off too much on Ospreay, and he's just like, hey, it's fun losing a bunch of matches.